The sound in the background that might or might not be there is my roommate eating bones, or it's just my cat eating his cat food. Who knows? Ooh. Hi there, friendo. I'm Ray. I work in a library, and sometimes people request books that they don't have available to them to physically get, and so it's my job to go and obtain those for them so that they can read them in the library. A lot of those kids are kids doing History Day, which is where you read a bunch of stuff about history. I don't know, I didn't go to high school here. But they'll request these books. I can't imagine a 13-year-old wanting to read a 1900 story about war. It's not a story, it's always really boring stuff where the books are covered in black and orange dust. I don't really have answers for it. Clearly they don't really know what they're getting themselves into. So the part of the library that they sometimes request from is called the Annex, which we closed about a month after I started working there. And they'll just fill out an online form and we'll go and get those books for them. The Annex has 3 parts, and each one is a little bit creepier than the last. In the general section, which is most of the Annex, most of what people request, the shelves are automatic, so you push a button and then the shelves will move one way or the other to let you in. It's kind of cool, except there are all these signs that ask you to check between the open shelves before you move them. And normally I don't do this because the lights are off when I go in, and I wouldn't really expect someone to be looking in the dark. But they might, which is kind of unnerving. It's really quiet in the Annex, and you can't ever not tell that. Even though I often listen to music or podcasts, it's just this aura in the air of quietness. So you're often left to your own thoughts, especially if you turn off your music or you haven't downloaded it, because sometimes the Wi-Fi doesn't work down there. And the air is kind of heavy. It has this really strong, musty scent to it. Maybe some of your grandparents who collect books, their houses might smell like that. Because I think a lot, I wonder a lot if anyone has died down there. I know it sounds morbid and maybe even unbelievable, but they could have been crushed by the shelves and a horrifying accident. We still haven't found the left arm. I really try not to think about these things because it's quite grim, and I know that I look emo, but I don't think it's a good look even for me. So I shift the bookshelves to the left and nothing happens. Because of the card system, the floors within the bookshelves are a bit disconnected from the floor of the main Annex. They're a bit more hollow, and so you can perpetually hear these footsteps behind you. And even when I do check the open shelves, which isn't as often as I should, you can almost always catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure at the end of the aisle. But then your eyes adjust to the light and everything's fine. I don't know if that's the same as the second part of the Annex. That room is its own horror. It has tile floors and concrete walls, so you can hear almost every movement echoing in there. And I think that the one thing it does have going for it is that it doesn't have the automatic shelves, because it was never meant to be used for bookshelves. you can tell that because the lights there's one at the entrance, and that's the only one there. And the bookshelves reach almost to the ceiling, so it's perpetually dark in most of it. When I was being trained on the annex, my manager told me that I should always bring my phone in there so that I could have a source of light, so I could see the books. I often wonder what would happen if my phone died or just stopped working or the flashlight stopped. I wonder how long it would take for the scent of my corpse to protrude the air and actually carry. I can't imagine, because of the thickness of the walls and because it is a separate room, I can't imagine that the scent would pollute the air very quickly. Would it just be lost beneath the just heavy, dust-encrusted air? Probably. I don't know. I have no doubts in my mind that the final section of the annex is by far the worst. It's barely used because the books don't circulate. Only a staff member can check out the key to get into it. And there are 2 entrances where you can use this key. The first one is down a long, winding hallway outside of the annex, and the other one is through the creepy annex. I'm not entirely sure which one's better, because they both tend to be rather dark and no one really goes back there. It's pretty rare that even staff go back there, because who wants to check out a book that's so oversized that you can't even stack it side by side, that you have to lay them flat? We call them flats. Just massive books. And it's always something silly, like a 1922 periodical entitled The Literary Review. I can't imagine it makes for an enthralling read. And that makes it a little bit worse. So I tend to suspect ulterior motives. But I think if I wanted to murder someone, if it didn't really matter who, but I wanted to murder someone, I would request the book, wait for a person to fulfill the request, follow them in, stab them to death, steal their key, and leave through the other entrance. Because the people at the desk tend to be rather busy, I think you could find a time where they wouldn't notice if you dropped off the key. They probably wouldn't question whether it was me or not. Is that the first sign that someone had died would be the smell. But it has the same problem as the rest of the annex that I've mentioned, except that it's more out of the way. The scent would just seep in like molasses, slowly but strongly. I think by the time it seeped in, it would just be so unbearable that someone would notice a few weeks later. By that point, I can't really imagine there would be much left. of my disintegrating corpse. Besides that, my job is really wonderful. But if I die in 29 scene, that's where I would look for the body.